Good evening. Today is Monday, October 22nd, and I'll call the Burnsville Planning Commission meeting to order. First item on our agenda is adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes from staff?
None from staff.
Any from the commission? See none, I'll look for a motion.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Corey, seconded by Mr. Singh. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the motion carries. Brings us to item number 2, which is approval of the...
We'll check that in 1 second, make sure.
Number 2 is approval of the minutes from October 8th, 2012. Any changes from city staff
None from staff.
and from the commission? See none, I'll look for a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
And a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Singh, seconded by Mr. Julik. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And those are approved. Which brings us to item number 3, which is a public hearing for Walzer Automotive Group for an application for a PUD amendment for a new Walzer Honda facility in a 3-lot subdivision to be known as Walzer Second Edition, located at 14800 Buck Hill Road. Mr. Slaney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. As you indicated, this is a public hearing for Walzer Automotive Group. This project started the ball rolling back in 2008. Staff's very happy to see the project come to fruition at this point, and we'll go through some of the details. I know the Walzer Group's also excited to be bringing this forward and plans a pretty expedited construction time frame, assuming all things go well. The property is Zone B3 PUD. It exists as a PUD from previous years, getting back to 2008. The aerial photo in front of you at this point puts the property in perspective. Buck Hill Road is on the right, Burnhaven is on the left. The new Honda sales and service is located in this area. Used Honda is right here, and experienced Honda is right here. The property currently exists as 2 properties. This site here and the rest of the parcel sits as 1. Again, getting back to a previous approval when it was a larger building, more centrally located along Buck Hill here. In total, we're looking at just over 12 acres in size between the 4 city streets that surround the property. And the application specifically is for PUD amendment and a 3-lot subdivision. The application would demolish the existing new car facility. This site would be regraded, and I'll show you the property lines in 1 second. The site would be regraded. This parking lot would be retained. The experienced auto site would be maintained, remained essentially the same with a few adjustments to the property lines. Walzer used Hondas would remain the same, again with a few adjustments to the property lines. There would be significant grading along here and here along the property lines with retaining walls to compensate for those changes. The new facility is going to include a sales showroom, office, auto repair, service center, etc. Let me jump to a couple other images. So here you can see the proposed building in the dark black, the 2 lots remaining the same, and the significant grade changes that we are dealing with between Buck Hill Road and the finished floor of the building at this point, as well as the close property lines here and the grade here, and trying to maintain the existing parking stalls in this area. Those stalls were parking stalls were put in by Walzer in 2008 in conjunction with this pond. Obviously, the applicant would like to remove those costs for reconstruction. There are light poles in there, the lot's striped, new curb and gutter, etc., and would prefer not to remove those and incur additional costs. So here is the proposed site. As I indicated in the staff report, the existing driveway to the new Honda dealership is in this location off of Buck Hill Road. That would be closed. The driveway would be shifted down here. This provides almost direct access between Burnhaven and Buck Hill Road. There is obviously a turn right here. This is great for semi-transport loading and unloading, as well as emergency service vehicles, fire truck access. They're not making a lot of turns within the parking lot. They can get in and out very easily. We are dealing with a 3-lot subdivision. Indicated on this visual aid is the description of the 3 lots. Everything within this property is known as Block 1. Here's Lot 1, the experienced autos. Lot 2 is the redevelopment parcel. And Lot 3 is the used Hondas. Again, I just wanted to put this in perspective because in the staff report I did discuss different lot sizes, green space requirements. Lot 1 is proposed at 1.2 acres. Lot 2 is proposed at 6.7 acres. And Lot 3 is proposed at 3.3 acres. Each of them satisfies the total required green space within the lot. Lot 2, which is the redevelopment site, actually provides 28% green space. Within the site, only 25% is required. They are providing their 50% perimeter landscape. They're also providing 432 parking spaces within that site. The ordinance requirement would be 84 based on employees and customer service. So obviously a significant amount of inventory is proposed within Lot 2. As I indicated, there will be significant grading within Lot 2. I do have the grading plan here. It's difficult to see on this image, but the applicant is using the green space along Lot 3 and the green space within the parking lot islands up front to try to compensate for some of those grade changes. Again, minimal changes to the lot lines on the other 2 parcels. The applicant has proposed a precast building. I've got the material samples here. If anybody would like to take a closer look at them, I'm going to pass around. What I'm passing around are the precast metal panels, very similar to the other car dealerships that we've approved recently. A lot of this will be on the front of the building. The front would be facing east to give it a very modern, clean, sleek look, if you will. There's the Honda blue, obviously. All of the signage on the building would be blue, as well as the awnings. The rest of it, at least from the front, will be the white precast panel, the white metal panel, and there's an exposed aggregate precast panel that will be used for the balance of the building. I'll just walk through this in 1 second. The east elevation is what you'll see from Buck Hill Road, the color elevation I just showed you. The west elevation is essentially the rear of the building. That will be almost in 2 phases. You'll see a portion of this somewhat close to Burnhaven Road. This section, because of the L shape of the building, is set back quite a bit farther from Burnhaven, and won't be as noticeable. It'll be tucked behind the Experienced Autos dealership. The north elevation here and the south elevation here. Again, there is a deviation outlined in the report for the metal panels. The ordinance limits the use of these panels to only 25%, getting to an accent material. Again, between Walser, Nissan, and Volkswagen dealerships recently, we have approved these panels. They are a quality long-term material. It's just a catch in the ordinance. We want the Planning Commission and City Council to see what the buildings are going to look like and why the panels are being used, and make sure it is compliant with the ordinance. The rest of the requirements within architectural standards, is including building height and screening, is all satisfied. The proposed building is 34 feet in height. Because of the existing parapet walls and grade changes, all of the rooftop equipment, the HVAC equipment, will be screened. There will be portions along, it would be the south property. Let me jump to views from the south Crystal Lake Road. Because of the grade changes there, you will be able to see more of the roof. The applicant has proposed additional screening walls made of the metal panels to screen the units, so you're not, although you're going to see onto the roof, you're not going to specifically see the HVAC equipment. So the applicant has thought through that and been very proactive with city staff. I did talk about parking. It does satisfy the ordinance. The other item I'd like to discuss is the landscaping. The 25% total landscaping satisfied, the 50% building perimeter satisfied. The applicant is asking for a deviation of green space within the parking lot. For new and used dealerships, the ordinance requires 8% parking lot green space. The applicant is proposing 6.9%, so we've got a 1.1% deviation. The applicant has exceeded the other landscaping standards. They're providing more green space square footage within the lot than they need to, but they're short on green space within the parking lot specifically. Staff feels it's reasonable. It is a difficult site to deal with between the grades and the odd shape of the parcel. The landscaping is well thought out to be protective of the residential to the south and the residential to the west across Burnhaven Drive. There are single-family homes, and to the south along Crystal Lake there are multifamily residential homes. As I indicated, the rooftop equipment will be screened. The trash enclosure is located on the west side of the building. This is detached from the building, which is permitted by ordinance as long as it's screened with walls, doors, and a roof, which it is. The signage package for the project is somewhat conservative. By no means is the applicant coming close to their allowable square footage. I'll hit on a couple of the primary signs. Honda will be located on the east elevation, as well as the Honda H logo. Walser will be located on the east elevation. Here we have Service Center and some smaller signs I'll get to in a second. On the north elevation, the applicant's looking at Honda and Walser. There's also an existing pylon sign on site. The applicant's not proposing any changes to that. It is the proposed or existing Honda H logo that sits on Buck Hill. And finally, the deviation within the ordinance. There are 3 doors here that all call for, that all indicate service signs. There's also a car wash within the building. The applicant has proposed cabinet signs here. They're 12 square feet in size, but the ordinance requires these be individual letters rather than a cabinet sign. Because of mandates from Honda, the applicant's requesting that these be allowed as cabinets. Internally illuminated. They're not poor-looking signs, they're just designed differently. The applicant's asking for deviation on that. Staff is supportive of them due to the minimum amount of square footage they represent. There's 4 signs of this design. Each is 11.5 or 12.5 square feet, and will be, really they'll only be visible once you're on site and looking to get into the building. They're not one of the primary signs for Walser or Honda. The applicant did submit a full lighting plan that is consistent with the ordinance. We jump to a different image. The existing light poles on the western lot will remain in this area. They are 26 feet in height. The balance of the new Honda facility, this area here and within here, will be new downcast fixtures. These fixtures will be shorter than the existing. They will be mounted at a 24-foot height, again to keep the glare and the spill down. The applicant's done a great job of landscaping the, let me jump to that plan, landscaping the hill along Crystal Lake Road, a mixture of overstory and coniferous trees to help buffer or screen. Obviously, some of these properties sit at a much higher level, as well as they are multi-story. So residents will be able to see into the parking lot. The applicant has satisfied the landscape or the lighting ordinance. Any additional glare will be difficult to prevent. But I think the applicant is cognizant of the residential properties around the area. There is also a required buffer along Burnhaven Drive because it is across the street from residential. The applicant's done a nice job of planting overstory trees, coniferous trees. Staff is looking for additional lower to the ground trees, shrubs that are more in that 2 to 3 to 4 foot range to buffer headlights or just give a little more of a physical edge to anyone walking along Burnhaven Drive. That is the only condition proposed by staff. As indicated, the report, park dedication and other development fees have been paid. The applicant is proposing a plat that complies with all our requirements for drainage and utility easements. There will be a plat vacation addressed by the City Council, assuming this stays on schedule. Staff is recommending approval with the one condition listed in the report. Mr. Chairs, Commissioners, Dave Phillips and Don Schilling with Walser Auto are here. I think they'll be able to answer any questions that Jeremy and I are unable to do, and it is a public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Slaney. Are there questions of City staff? Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Slanier, since this property borders residential areas, we have single-family residential and high-density residential, was it required to inform or to let neighbors in the residential areas know what the plans are and what's going to go on?
That's a great question, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. The Because of the request made by the applicant, whether it was adjacent to residential or commercial, the required public notice in the paper and to the adjacent property owners was mailed out.
Oh, so they did get information?
They did, they
Thank you
were
very much.
notified, correct.
No, there was no meeting, there was no meeting?
There was not a neighborhood meeting.
Anything else, Mr. Singh? Mr. Singh, anything else?
Yes, I have one other question, sorry, Mr. Chair. Mr. Slania, you said that in tree preservation, your background information says the applicant is required to reinvest only $165 in new trees into the site? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Amazing.
The percentage of replacement differs between residential and commercial simply because of the number of trees on the site compared to the number of trees the applicant is saving. They are very close to that threshold. I believe they're over by 1.1% or something like that. So the required reforestation is minimal, $165. The reforestation planned, this excludes shrubs, other ground cover, and flowers, perennials. The required or the proposed reforestation is still $50,000 by the applicant. So they are certainly reinvesting into the site.
Mr. Chair, I think the Walzer Group has done a good job in the planning. That's when you mention $165. I mean, they have obviously did a good job in keeping the green areas and what they plan to do to, in case they have to lose anything, they would be replacing them. So thank you very much. My one other question I have regarding the stormwater runoff.
Mm-hmm.
You did mention the background information says the systems have been designed to meet the requirements of our city's water resources management plan. Can you, it's kind of a little complicated for me. Can you explain a little bit what it entails?
I can try. I think Jeremy would do a better job of that. There are also some images I can show you on the site plan as we get to those, how the different stormwater is being addressed.
Thank you.
Should we do that now?
Let's do that now.
Sure.
I can kind of briefly touch on what our stormwater treatment requirements are with our water resource management plan. Anytime a project comes in for development, if they trigger a certain threshold, they have to treat the stormwater that runs off their site. And the city of Burnsville has 3 different criteria that we expect stormwater to be treated to, one being a rate control. And essentially you can't increase the rate of runoff off of your property. The second one is a water quality. We expect the runoff to be treated so that suspended solids or any phosphorus that's picked up as the runoff crosses your property, a certain level of that has to be removed prior to you discharging from the site. And then the third requirement is an infiltration requirement, and that gets to the volume of runoff exiting the site. So on this site, since it's essentially a redevelopment, they had to infiltrate a half-inch of runoff from the site. So that's accomplished through a couple of different systems within the property. One being the surface stormwater pond that you see on the west side of the property. There's also an underground infiltration area on the north along Burkhart's, and then there was also an existing one south of where that pond is, and that allows them, it has some underground storm sewer pipes that are perforated to allow that infiltration to occur. So with those three systems in place, they'll meet all the city's requirements for treating the runoff before they discharge it from their site.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Slania, on the plantings along the south and the, I guess it'd be the west side, what Do you know what size of trees, how tall when they initially put them in, and what they are planning on as far as the height and sort of the density, if you will?
Yes, I can summarize that. Let me jump to a different. So, apologize, let me find my. This grouping are lindens. They'll be, when they go in, unfortunately, they'll be the 2.5 caliper, which is the standard size. They are overstory, so they will exceed the 25-foot requirement, or the, I guess, classification. Once they are mature, that will over time provide a buffer from Crystal Lake Road down into the site. There's also a mixture of spruce down here, blue spruce, and I apologize, I can't think of everything in here, but there are overstory and coniferous, and the same applies for Burnhaven Drive. There are lindens in here, other overstory that will break that 25-foot mature height, as well as coniferous. When the coniferous go in there, standard is 6 foot at the time of planting.
Thank you.
Mr. Julik?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions, Chris. Looking at the same view that you have on site, as you access from Buck Hill Road, there's a left you can take to the existing Honda dealer right there, yeah, where you have the mouse. That's a pretty steep grade, and I think as it exists today. And I have a concern, with the way, I've actually been looking for a car lately, so driving into the dealerships there. If I come in off Buck Hill Road, if I have the option to turn left right there, it's a pretty kind of awkward thing. Has engineering looked into any considerations there as far as stacking? It doesn't seem like you have enough place to queue the traffic for any left-hand turns in there. Has the applicant considered removing that, or does staff have any concerns there?
I can just tell you at a glance, with I'll just use this image, with the elimination of the driveway that exists now, there will be a retaining wall that goes in here and significant grading in this area. The applicant may be able to help me with this, but I believe this portion of the lot will be changed significantly, so I think I can't say the grade change is gone completely, but I think it's reduced. Jeremy, do you have more detail on that?
Just to clarify, you're speaking of the connection between the two lots?
The Lot 2, and I'm assuming this is Lot 3, the old one?
Correct.
So the connection between Lot 2 and Lot 3, I think as it exists today, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's a fairly steep grade there. I'm just concerned about left-hand turns. A lot of traffic on Buck Hill Road there, and there's really no turning lanes. There's no left turn lanes. There's no right turn lanes. You got 2 lanes of traffic each way, and there's a lot of traffic there.
Yeah, you're correct. It is a pretty steep driveway or connection between the two, but it does meet the city's requirement. We have a maximum of 15%. It is underneath that threshold. In terms of vehicles that are entering the site and maybe taking a left turn up there, there's sufficient room for a couple of cars, 2-3 cars, to be stacked there before it would back out into Buck Hill Road. So stacking into the road is not a concern.
Yeah, I still have a concern with that.
We
We'll get
can
to the
address that
applicant.
now, or
Let's hold off our questions to the applicant.
Decided to eliminate that altogether.
Okay.
And you can make that a condition if you want.
okay.
It's going away.
Okay, we can come back to this in a second. The applicant's indicating they've chosen to remove that.
Okay. And then I had one other concern then is with the, if I go straight to the west from there and the corner of the building, and I think you had mentioned earlier that there's semis would be coming in this way and doing the offloading of the vehicles possibly. Has at the west edge of the new building and where the road zigzags there a little bit,
Up
where
here?
it zigs to the north, has that been looked at for ability to for semis to effectively make that zigzag?
It has, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the applicants looked at both semis and fire trucks to make sure their turning radius fits through there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. White?
Just some clarification on the lighting. I'm trying to read it on here. Are we seeing any difference in the number of actual lights that are going to be in place here, the number of poles? I know that you said the height's going to change, but is there going to be an actual change in number?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I would expect so. As I indicated, these lights will remain because they are relatively new. The balance of the site is older. The applicant probably tell us when those went in, but they are, I'm sure they're not as efficient. They're not as crisp, clean lights as what we're proposing at this point. I'm sure there is going to be a change. I couldn't tell you off the cuff if we're increasing or decreasing total number. I can tell you we're decreasing in height, and we are going to end up with consistency with the ordinance requirements for spill. Not to say they're over spill now, but those lights have been out there for quite a while.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Mr. Slaney, I just have a few questions. One is about, and it's probably not so much to this site in particular, but the H, is that considered a logo?
It is considered a logo by Honda, or both from
By the
the,
city.
correct,
Okay.
correct.
Going back to lighting, it seems to me from past applications that we've had some plan about turning off the number of lights at night. Did I miss that, or?
No, that is something the applicant's considering. They need a minimum light candle, foot candle to operate any cameras or security and things like that. They can touch on that. It's not something that I've discussed with the applicant thus far.
So the way it stands, they could leave all the lights on?
The way it is right now. That may be their internal process to shut some down or shut them off. It's just not something I've covered with.
And I'm sorry that I bring this up during a meeting. I should have emailed you. But am I correct in remembering that other lots around there that actually have something where they need to turn down the lights at night?
I believe they do. I don't recall specifically which lots, and it may be something that Walser does on a standard operation anyway. I'm not sure.
Thank you. I have a question about the stormwater. So the stormwater is only the pond and the underground, the 2 underground spots. Is that just for Lot 2?
The pond and the 2 underground infiltration areas will serve Lot 2, and then also Lot 3. It was designed. Lot 3 is this southeastern lot. The pond and the underground infiltration on the west portion of the lot, those were previously constructed and installed with a prior development application where Lot 3 was part of that.
Okay.
So they sized that and constructed it, assuming that Lot 3 would be redeveloped. So that is being handled with those areas. Otherwise, since nothing's occurring on Lot 3 right now, it wouldn't have to meet the stormwater treatment requirements, but because of it was previously constructed, it does.
Okay. So, let me just refresh, or, you said some of Lot 1 is going into Lot 2?
No,
Oh.
none of Lot 1
Okay,
has any treatment on site currently.
okay. Thank you. And the last question was about do we have a ordinance about when semis can drop off cars? Or running at night?
We do. I can check it in a second. I believe it's loading and unloading cannot occur after 10 p.m. or before 7 a.m. I will check the specific times. We did discuss that with the applicant. They're
They're fully aware of that?
correct.
Okay. That's all I had. Any other questions of staff? Oh, Mr. Julik?
Thank you, Chair. Just based on Chair Tyken's previous question, this is a private stormwater management system?
Correct.
A lot of times in a PUD like this, you'll have, and I know it's under one ownership at this point in time, but you would have kind of cross-maintenance and agreements with respect to who has to maintain and pay for the stormwater management systems. Is there anything like that in place in case Lot 3 is sold in the future, or would that somehow be addressed then, or what are the implications here?
Do you want to cover that?
There will be the city does get a stormwater management agreement, which requires that any improvements installed be maintained by private property owners. The actual private easement agreements between Lot 2 and 3 would be required as part of the application process, where Lot 3 would have, we get private easement agreements where Lot 3 would have rights to use that system.
So you deal with it essentially through the stormwater management application or through some other?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, no further, thank you.
Any other questions? No. Thank you. Oh, Mr. Slaney?
I do have one other comment, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you bringing it up. There were a number of items that came about the ordinance changes. I believe we did them in 2008 or 2009, right after we saw this Honda project before. It did include hours for deliveries of vehicles, the paging system requirements that the car wash is not open to the general public. All of those criteria still apply. They were all covered with the applicant. They're agreeable to them. The reason I didn't put them in specifically as conditions is because they're part of the ordinance, and the applicant's subject to them and required to abide by them unless they would ask for a deviation. So there are a number of other checklists that protect the neighbors from noise. No outdoor speakers are allowed, and any other number of requirements.
So I know we have quite a few people here tonight, and we are up against multifamily and single family. So no speakers, period, or just at night?
No outdoor speakers at all.
Okay. And then the car wash, I know, is not open to the public.
Correct. Let me give me 1 second here. I can go through those requirements.
I think it would
just
be
so
helpful.
everybody knows what.
Right.
Yep.
Of course, we put you on the spot, so you have to quickly look.
That's
them up.
all right.
We live in a connected society, though, right?
I knew this was going to come up. I should have had it.
So it sounds like after 2008, we kind of took a step back and put those into. Yeah.
All right. This applies to all open sales and rental lots, which we would consider new or used dealerships. We talked about the minimum of 8% green space within the parking lot. No auctions are permitted. No outdoor speakers systems are permitted when they are adjacent or across the street from residential. which this site is. Delivery and loading hours are limited to 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. So the opposite of those are prohibited for vehicle delivery. And the there are also requirements for the car wash itself, when that can be operated or not, and it is not open to the general public. Walser customers are entitled to use that, but it would not be similar to a gas station car wash.
And there's nothing about lighting in there specifically? I know that's probably called out in a different section.
Correct. It just references our standard lighting requirements.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Slaney. Any other questions? Seeing none, I would like to invite the applicant to come forward. Good evening and welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is David Phillips. I'm the architect for Walser Automotive Group. My address is Phillips Architects at 227 Colfax Avenue North in Minneapolis.
Good evening and welcome.
Thank you.
I know there's one question about the connection between Lot 2 and 3, and I think you...
It's our intent, we've looked at that, and it's our intent to close that altogether. It's drivable, as your engineer has indicated, but we think there's just too much going on there, as indicated by the commission member, and so it's our intent to close it.
Close that up. And that doesn't create any issues with the city, does it?
It does not. It will increase the green space slightly, which is a positive, and it'll satisfy all the setback requirements.
Okay.
The other comment I would have on going from back to forward is the stormwater is all met as indicated on Lot 2. While Walser has no plans to sell Lot 3, we want another facility there. Should that happen, that owner would have to either build it all again or have an easement from us. So you have lots of protection there. I mean, they couldn't redevelop that site if we sold it without either building the same kind of very expensive structures we've already built, or making sure they had the cross easements when they bought it. Their lawyers wouldn't allow them to miss that.
Okay.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cost.
Anything else you'd like to add about the...
We appreciate the staff. We've worked, your staff has worked with us very closely. We appreciate the attention they've given this project in moving it forward, and we're excited to actually be building. The economy really tanked in '08 when we brought in the last project. The auto industry, as we all know, was hit very hard, and we see some resurgence coming. So this will be Walser's 4th new building auto dealership in Burnsville. So they're very happy to be a business located in Burnsville, and 4 new buildings in the last 12 years. I think we did our first one in 2000. We think that'll be a nice accomplishment when this one's finished.
And we appreciate you continuing to update. I'm sad to see the windmill go, though. But
Yeah.
It's kind of an icon in driving down 35.
I asked Jeremy if he would raise Burkhart's Drive 6 feet, and I didn't get anywhere.
Mr. Corey has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Sir, maybe you could comment on the new lighting,
Sure.
the number, if you know. and that sort of thing.
I don't know the specific numbers. There would be more poles in front or on the east side of the building because we pulled the building westerly, the face of it, and you just have building. There would be less poles behind the building because we have the building, I don't know how I can point here, in the area going...
You should be able to move the mouse and show up on that.
Ah, yes. There's going to be more poles out here in the front, primarily because the old building was way out here. There's certainly less poles in this area of the lot. This is really the same. We're moving 2 or 3 poles slightly to adjust them to the new rows. And the lot that we built in '08 with all the stormwater, both the underground structures and the pond, will remain the same, except it'll get new blacktop in that. And, of course, the landscaping. And we have no concerns with the condition of the additional landscaping. We're happy to do that, so.
Thank you, sir.
I just kind of a follow-up question about lighting is there a plan to cut some off at night?
I haven't, our practice has been in the back, and I'd have to go back and look at our prior approval, is to cut this down to about somewhere between 25% and 30%. You can't do exactly because you have different number of heads on different poles. So we would leave security lighting in the back. In the front, our intent is to use a new LED lighting. The reports I get, I've been working with 2 manufacturers that are working on the designs that we've given the cities here. It's kind of like learning a new language. LED, when you look at the foot candles, you'll see a 15, and that's equivalent to our old 40-foot candles. And it's very hard. One of the benefits as we switch over our lots to LED is instant on, versus the metal halide that we have today has a warm-up period. So if you turn it on 20, 30 minutes, sometimes more in the winter, will pass before that bulb starts glowing fully. With the LED, it's much more immediate. So we're looking at the possibility of maybe motion sensors. So if somebody comes on the light and is stealing wheels or tires, that happens occasionally, if they walk there, maybe the motion sensors will turn on that section of light, and any police driving by would notice the change in the lot. But that we haven't fully worked that out. But the backside toward the residents, we would cut down to 20-30% for security.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Any other questions?
I just want to comment. I think that was a concern I had. And I wanted reason why I had asked the question earlier, if they had a meeting with the neighbors, and or if some correspondence was sent to them. Because in the past, similar projects, we had concerns that came up from neighbors about the light, the volume of light all night, and some people who live near to the thing, then it bothers them. So I'm glad that will be taken care of. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to come forward and speak in this matter, please come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you. My name is Donovan Wagner. I live at the Gramercy Cooperative at 15001 Burnhaven Drive, and I think what we'd like to say is welcome back. We're glad to have you. It's hard to believe that it took 4 years to recover a 3 months tailspin, but that's the result, and we're very, very pleased to have you back. Now, if I understand, Lot 3 is not going to be changed in any way. It'll stay as it is. Then there will be some retaining walls going along the interior, the north and the west side, because of the drop in grade through there. Okay, I think it looks very good. You've heard us scream about landscaping, and you've answered. Any other questions?
Oh, Mr. Wagner?
Sure.
If you're done, then I'll invite somebody else to talk. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay. I'm done.
Okay. Thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts with us. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. My name is Gary Gregoria, and I also live at the Gramercy Club Cooperative. And you know, we're all old people over there. And one thing that we do a lot is look out our windows. And I would like to invite the people from Walser to my unit some evening to take a look at what we see. And perhaps by looking at it, you might want to do something about the lighting that makes it a little less intrusive, especially later at night. But the other thing is that I'm very concerned about the landscaping. Now, I hear a lot of things about landscaping. This is going to be great. We're going to do this and that and everything else. But when we first moved in there, I noticed that as you come down Burnhaven Drive from the mall, there's beautiful trees in the median strip there. And so I contacted the city because there are no beautiful trees in the median strip from South Haven all the way up to 150th. It's barren. And so I contacted the city, and they were very nice, and they said, yeah, we're going to plant some trees along there. I said, great, that's wonderful. And they did. And they're about this big, and I don't know how many feet apart they are, but you don't even know they're there. They're little dinky things. And then I think in terms of, you probably had a great landscaping plan for Toyota when they built their whole new facility. I walk by the Toyota dealership all the time and see the fantastic landscaping they've done. Once again, tiny little trees. We are old people. We don't have time to see them grow to full fruition so that they actually provide something pretty. I invite you guys to go down to where I'm talking about. Walk by the Toyota dealer that I'm sure you approved and said it was a wonderful landscaping deal. It is not, and it doesn't do anything to block anything. I see all these beautiful things that are going to happen here on the corner of Burnhaven and 150th Street, and I envision the same kind of thing. There's going to be some little shrub, some little stick tree, and something that really doesn't beautify that area or make it easier for those of us who look out on it all the time. So there's a couple of things I'd like to suggest, and I don't even know if it's possible. A lot of times you see plans, and on paper they look just fantastic. But when you see them in completion, and I'm sure you guys have had this happen to you all the time as planners, when you see the completed project, you go, well, that's not exactly what we thought we were getting. Is there any way that you can write in to the permit a review after it's all done? In other words, if we find after they've done all this fantastic landscaping that there's just a couple little twigs sitting out there that really don't do anything to help block our view of cars, and believe me, that's what we see as cars, cars, and more cars, then perhaps you could write into there that they might have to do a little bit better job of upgrading that area. I don't know if that's possible or not. But it is a big concern for us, and I'd appreciate it if you'd look at it. Number two, the loudspeaker system. The loudspeaker system is working all the time. All day long I hear the loudspeaker system. So I didn't even know there was an ordinance that said you couldn't have one of those, but there is. And we hear them paging constantly on that loudspeaker system. And I even wonder, in this age of technology, why in the world you have to page somebody? You know, don't they have cell phones or some sort of device that you can just press a button and get a hold of a particular person instead of having to page constantly? And then the music that they play. Not too bad during the day, but sometimes it goes on all night long. I've had nights myself where I couldn't even go to sleep because there was music playing over there. So I don't know if maybe the janitorial service turns it on and doesn't turn it off or what, but it's not pleasant trying to sleep at 3 o'clock in the morning and hearing some rock music coming from the loudspeakers over there. So we love Honda. I drive a Honda. I deal with Walser Honda. I think they're fantastic, but I do want to make sure that we do have some protection on the landscaping side, and I would surely love to hear the loudspeaker system not used anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gregoria. Any other questions or comments? Good evening and welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Ralph Stromowski. I also am a resident of Gramercy. I'm one of the old folks. This is an entirely new plan from what we had previously, so I sort of have to look at it a little bit. But I'm wondering two things. We've been talking about lighting, and the parking lot lights are one thing, but in my unit, which happens to be on the third floor, I can do shadows on the wall all night with all my lights off. And the light source isn't the parking lot lights, it's the building lights above the doors. They are not down lights only, they are the type that sort of do a 90 degrees so they cast out and down. Well, the casting out is right into my unit. Now, I know Bloomington, if you're within X number of feet of a residential area, you're not allowed those kind of lights. They have to be down lights only. Also, I'm wondering what's happening with this Lot 1 here on the corner of Crystal Lake Road and Buck Hill Road. We've been talking pretty much about this black area, which is the new building, and the parking lot there and the parking lot here. This parking lot, I assume, will be graded to that level, same level, because they are at different levels now, and that'll make this whole area an entirely different level from that. So what's the plan for this area with the building that's on it now? That has not been mentioned at all. And then another thing, I come down Buck Hill Road quite a bit to get over here to Crystal Lake Road. And one of the things that's really bad, in my opinion, people come down that road and they try to see what kind of cars are on the lots, and then eventually they're looking for a turnoff, and when they find it, they almost slam on their brakes to make that hard right turn to go into the street that, or not the driveway that was here, but now will be here apparently. So I'm thinking that maybe you guys ought to think about putting a right turn lane there, so that if people do want to make that turn, they can coast into that and not disturb Buck Hill traffic so much. And it would also help your car carriers make that turn also. But I sure would like to know what's going to happen here, because are we going to end up with a derelict building, a vacant lot?
And we'll get to some of your questions after everybody has a chance to speak.
Right, and then there's also a power line easement that goes all the way across. So whenever you're discussing landscaping, you have the power lines above and you have the water lines underneath. So I hope that's taken into account.
Okay. Thank you for coming to Mr. Stromowski. Anyone else wishing to speak to this matter? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Invite the applicant back up to answer a few questions. Mr. Phillips?
Thank you. I have, I think, 4 questions I'd be happy to address. With respect to the landscaping guarantee, the city requires a bond. I can't remember the last one, but it's in the $100,000 kind of range. And they don't release this bond until they've inspected the landscaping and made sure it complies with the plan. So, and that's, I think that's been the city practice for many years, has it not,
Correct.
Chris? I will check with Walser. We have Don Schilling, who is the facility director for Walser, with me tonight. We're not aware of Walser playing music over any loudspeakers at 3 a.m. or any time, but we'll address that with our stores at least tomorrow. We'll find out, and should it be found that they're doing that, we'll make sure it stops. I mean,
Oh, ma'am, I don't want to have a discussion between people, so thank you.
you can get me in the hall. But it would not be practice, and we would not tolerate that. The building lights on the new building all will be straight down lights. So if you're seeing ones projecting out, On the old building, they just won't be there anymore. The new Honda will have them straight down. As far as the last question that I had is the question of the remainder corner. Long-term, we would like to see another new franchise there and redevelop this lot for another new car franchise. Those are hard to come by. Over the last 10 years, Burnsville has experienced a lot of growth in car dealers, but we have 10-mile circles. So if you take every existing car franchise in the city and draw a 10-mile radius, that's a 20-mile diameter, you have very few holes where you can fit a new car dealer in. We had that when Chrysler was built 12 years ago. It's now our Mazda store. In the short term, the site will remain substantially as it is. It will be operated selling used cars. Walser does most of their reconditioning at a site in South St. Paul. We have a 10-acre site where all the used cars start, and they're photographed and they're cleaned up. So we don't have those kind of operations directly here. We do minor cleanup on the cars, but it's really a site that we're platting separate, because without the separate lot, we have no ability to go to a manufacturer and say, we have an opportunity for you. And I think we would like to see that redeveloped with another new building, make it our 5th new building in Burnsville, but we don't have anything on the horizon today for that.
And Dave, just to clarify that, the existing used Honda will remain unchanged. The grades are not changing,
Right.
The building's not changing at this point. Can you outline just where those retaining walls are?
There,
We know what's
on the existing site, the retaining wall comes in front of the new building somewhat and goes to the west, and then it diagonals a little bit, and then it will go south to some point along here. I think at its greatest it'll be 6 to 7 feet tapering down. There's also another retaining wall along this line as the lots terrace down. We have this block in Burnsville slopes about 30 feet from this point to this point, and I think we have 15 or 17 feet from this point, or from this point to this point. East to west, we have 15, 16 feet of slope and 30 feet south to north. So it's a challenging site. That's why we're terracing the parking lot. You get the benefit out front here. The terracing puts more landscaping out in our displays. But this retaining wall really keeps this lot unchanged. It meets the current landscaping requirement, and when it's redeveloped, that's when you would see it redeveloped like we're doing with Honda now. But we hope to attract another manufacturer there. There's no secret, right?
Mr. Phillips, Mr. Julik has a question for you.
Just a couple of questions. I wrote down a few more questions from some of the gentlemen who spoke. I think one of them was the right turn lane. That was also a concern I had. Is that up to the applicant to put in a right turn lane, or is that is there a reason to not have one here? Because that is, I think I've experienced similar problems to that which Mr. Stromowski stated with respect to the right turn lane there.
That would be something that would be under the city's jurisdiction. Would be adding a right turn lane. It's helpful to note that there are no right turn lanes anywhere along Buck Hill Road, from South Cross down to Crystal Lake. So to put one in would really be an oddity, and there probably isn't really enough traffic entering the dealership there to justify the inclusion of a right turn lane.
Okay, thank you. And then, could you touch base, I think you raised a concern about some of the easements on the south lot line, the power line, the water main. I'm thinking with no changes to Lot 3 there, nothing is happening. Is that true, or?
On Lot 3, nothing is happening there. The landscape was substantially dealt with these issues in '08. The biggest change we did on the landscape from '08 is we took out all the ash trees because of the emerald ash borer. But clearly, we have to live by the dictates. If we find that there's a tree where we've located, when we're finalizing this for the permit with your staff, we'll keep the same number of trees. If we have to move them 2 or 3 feet to get them all away from the water line, we would do that. But we believe that they're okay in these locations.
Okay, and then maybe couple of questions, maybe for staff, maybe for you, but with respect to the landscaping, there was mention of size of trees and stuff. Basically, what we can do is require that which is in the ordinance. Is that correct? And there are specific sizes in the ordinance. Is that correct?
Correct. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I'm glad you brought that up. We do have an ordinance that requires how big the coniferous trees are when they go in, how big the overstory trees are. We use the industry standard, much like every other community, much like private developers do. Certainly, we'd love to see larger trees go in at the time of planting. Studies show they do not fare as well. They do not grow as fast, and they do not handle dry summers and cold winters as fast, and it gets to be very expensive because you're replacing those larger trees more often than you're replacing the smaller trees. It's certainly something we wish we could address, but even the city forester follows these standards because on city parks or whatever he has a better percentage of success with smaller trees, even in drought years like this.
All right, thank you. And then one last question, I believe, with respect to the paging system and the music playing all night. Those would obviously be, and I don't want to be in the middle of a dispute here or anything. Those would be against the ordinance? Is that correct?
Correct. That is an ordinance violation. I would be happy to get a call or email or anything from the neighbors, and we can address that pretty quickly.
And as indicated, we'll address it corporately tomorrow morning, but we're not aware of it. But I'm not saying it. I'm just saying we're not aware of it.
You have a mechanism to deal with it, and so does the city, so it can be stopped if indeed it is occurring. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. That was the additional questions that I thought that I took down. You may have.
I was just going to run through them. I was just going to touch base on the music and loudspeaker system. I'm curious why the dealerships would even have a loudspeaker system if it's not allowed in the city.
We don't think we do. But
and to reiterate, and I've done this before, is call the city if they are playing music or paging people, and someone from the city will respond to it, and they will take care of it.
And it could be another dealership that just carries.
I'm not saying it's Walser, but it's everybody in that neighborhood. Mr. Slaney, can you touch on the lighting? All lights supposed to be downcast?
Correct. I think Dave touched on that. All lights now, whether they're freestanding or on the building, are to be downcast. That issue will be corrected on the new Honda building, and I believe it's been corrected on the Experience building because we just got a facelift on that. There may be non-conforming lights on the used Honda building. Unfortunately, we've got to wait till that is redeveloped or sold or something like that. But as time goes on, we do correct those.
Let's see. I think we touched on the landscaping plan. Downcast lights, plans for lot 3. Yep. I was just going to touch on that power line easement that just grazes lot 2 and it affects more of lot 3. So the landscape, the trees on the south east corner might be affected a little bit, but otherwise they shouldn't. Those power lines shouldn't affect them. At least that's what the city staff
Correct.
is.
We will, when or if Lot 3 is developed, that is significantly impacted with those easements. And we'll have to deal with the landscaping when that comes around.
Mr. White?
I think you addressed my question. It was really just about the building lights, and they do have to be downcast, you said. So that addresses my question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
Thank you.
We've had our public hearing. We've heard from a number of citizens, and now it's time to hear from the commission.
Mr. Chair,
Oh.
can we close the public hearing? Or
I did.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is a major redevelopment of this area, and I want to, first of all, commend the neighbors for coming to the commission and expressing your thoughts and your concerns. As you heard from Mr. Slania, all they need, if the music or the lights are not according to what the city has in the ordinance, then just give them a call and they will take care of it. But I just want to say thanks for coming out and sharing your thoughts with the commission. Appreciate it.
Any other comments about the proposal? Mr. Julick?
First of all, I want to thank staff and Walzer for working together and putting together a plan that, again, brings some redevelopment to the city, probably expands the capability of the dealership and the business and the tax base in Burnsville. And Burnsville does appreciate Walzer's commitment to the city. I'm sure Walzer, with the good access that Burnsville provides and locations and stuff, gets a benefit out of it too. I'm empathetic to the concerns raised by the gentleman from Gramercy, and I think staff and the applicant have done some work to address a lot of those concerns. I understand that it's difficult for the city to require significant more with respect to a landscape plan than is required by ordinance, and it looks like, at least from my perspective, that there was an effort to achieve some balance there and put in landscaping that's significantly more than the city could require of the applicant to help address those concerns. Unfortunately, you do have the issue that you need to put in what is likely to survive, and I think Mr. Slaney addressed some of that in his discussion earlier. So, from my perspective, I think it's a welcome addition to the city. I think the staff and the applicant have worked hard to address some of the concerns of the neighbors. Maybe not all of them. Some of them, I think, may be able to be addressed via other means if there are indeed some ordinance violations occurring. From my perspective, I feel it's a good plan that addresses some of the needs of the neighbors and some of the concerns of the neighbors, and also revitalizes part of the city. So I'm in favor of the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Julick. Anyone else? I too want to kind of reiterate what Mr. Julick said, is that it's great to see that Walzer's reinvested in the city. Unfortunately, it's across the road from a multifamily residential area, and you have those problems with lights, and the businesses need to keep lights on, but residents have some right to have some darkness at night. I'm a little concerned about the fact that we're not really outlining a plan to kind of bring the lights down at night. And I think we've done that in past projects, so that troubles me a little bit. And maybe I'd like to hear what some more commissioners think about that. As far as, I know they're putting in LED lights, and I know those have a total different look, and I know we've dealt with them and the signs before. Even though they're not putting out the same amount of lumens, they're still brighter, sharper light. And maybe Mr. Slania or Jeremy can touch on, I think they put in LED at the corner of Nicollet and Burnsville Parkway recently. Or maybe I'm just...
I can say, Commissioners, the new Walmart store on Cliff is LED parking lot lights. I believe the new CVS also at Nicollet and Parkway are LED. So we have dealt with them before. Just something to consider, we do have an extra week because of the way the calendar falls. This won't go to the council next week, so that gives staff and the applicant a couple extra days. I'm sure they'd be happy to work something out, and we can either agree on a condition or just a statement that they're able to abide to by the for lighting by the time we get to council.
So this won't be our first endeavor into LED lights in the city? Okay,
no.
Good. Thanks.
It will be the first for a car dealership, correct?
Okay.
Yes.
And I know they are more expensive, but they save a lot of money, and it sounds like they have some added benefit of Instant On, which hopefully will improve security on your lot. And I really do appreciate people coming out tonight, because we'd like to hear from the citizens, and without you coming out and telling us how you feel, we have no idea. We're left with our own thoughts, so I appreciate it. And that's all I have, except for the lighting. I'd like to throw that back. Mr. White?
Thank you, Chair. I don't know that I have much new to add. I think you just touched on what I was going to talk about anyway, which was the lights. I'd like to see something in there regarding the timing and having them darker at night. But I think the concerns with having them facing downward, I think would be great. It looks like most of the light or more of the lighting is going to be shifted to the front with the shift of the building, so hopefully that helps too. And again, I think anything with landscaping has been addressed, as well as it can be, given the site, what they have to work with. So I'm pretty happy with what Walzer's put forward, and I'll definitely be supporting this. Thank you.
Any other commission? Thoughts about either putting in a condition or just kind of recommending staff to look at lights, Mr. Julik?
Just a question maybe to Chris. What would be the recommend? Should we?
At this point, the commission could direct staff to work with the applicant and bring language forward for the council.
I think I would go with that.
Okay.
So let it be recorded that the commission is asking staff to work with the applicant to look into the light situation, especially as it impacts the neighbors at the back of this.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Any other comments? I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the PUD amendment for a new Walzer Honda facility and a 3-lot subdivision to be known as Walzer Second Edition, located at 14800 Buck Hill Road, with the one condition that the applicant shall provide additional shrubs and other plantings along the western property line to enhance the parking lot screening consistent with Section 1030A A.B. The revised landscape plan shall be submitted to staff prior to releasing permits for any site improvements.
And do I hear a second?
Seconded.
Motion made by Mr. Singh, seconded by Mr. Julik. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. And the motion carries. This will go to the City Council on Monday, November 5th, so there's an extra week in there. It normally isn't there. Thank you and good luck. That brings us to item number 4, which is a review of tax increment financing plan number 7 for for consistency with the comprehensive plan. And Mr. Slania.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, I am glad we just covered the ordinance amendment at the last meeting, because hopefully that will keep things moving tonight and it's all fresh in everyone's memory. I know most of the commissioners, or the commission in general, doesn't deal with tax increment financing, tax abatement, etc. And it has been a long time since staff internally has dealt with it as well. The proposal this evening is actually very similar to a recommendation to the council, but rather than holding the public hearing, the council will do that at a later date. The Planning Commission, pursuant to state statute, needs to make a finding that the TIF plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan. And putting all those things together, we're dealing with the Minnesota River Quadrant again. We're dealing with really two things coming to fruition at once. The first would be legislation that the city was able to get passed back in 2008, basically the creation of a tax district within the MRQ. And TIF, simply put, is the ability for the property owner or another entity to retain the difference in the taxes that occur with a redevelopment. Obviously, a new building like Honda is going to put up will generate more taxes than the existing building. TIF captures that, whether that money goes to the city or the private developer, the EDA, etc. The city has the ability to capture that for a certain number of years. That just helps spur economic development, private development, etc. It's commonly used throughout the state of Minnesota, throughout the nation. It has been a number of years since we've created a new tax district. This will be District 7. And the other fortunate aspect is that we're getting closer to construction of County Road 5 and 13. So as that occurs, we are creating a lot of dirt that needs to be excavated, a lot of good dirt that needs to be excavated, and we have a number of properties in the neighborhood that need good dirt to remedy the poor soils on site. So that all being said, the comprehensive plan calls for redevelopment in the MRQ, and it will be a mixture of uses focusing on industrial and commercial. To get that redevelopment, we need to fix the soils. And to fix the soils, we need the TIF plan to come into place, and we need the 5 and 13 plan to come in place. So, not to simplify it too much, but by default, we need all of these to happen to satisfy the comprehensive plan long-term approval. If this doesn't happen, then it's not in compliance with the comp plan, because we're not going to see development down there. I know while you were not able to sleep over the weekend, you read through pages and pages of the comp plan and all the supporting information, so I'm not going to go through it now. It is not a public hearing, Mr. Chair, but staff is recommending approval of the TIF plan.
Thank you, Mr. Slaney. Are there any questions of Mr. Slaney?
I think, Mr. Chair, this was indeed, I made copies upon copies of this thing. It took, and then to go through it and mark it up, and well, you know what is in there. The metropolitan plan is in there, and what it gave me a better idea of the planning process that the city has. And I think it's remarkable. Burnsville compares very, very favorably with other cities of its size and location. So I think it's a good plan, and I see the TIF plan here that is consistent with the development plan. So I will support it.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. I too echo your thoughts about this area, and it's not, Burnsville doesn't get to see a major redevelopment like this, and they probably never will after this goes into effect, and it's interesting to see from right now, it's a big gravel pit and a bunch of industrial buildings into this grand plan of mixed use and a nice urban lake. So it's kind of fun to see that vision, and hopefully in our lifetime we'll see it unfold the way it's planned right now. So, any other comments or questions, Mr. Julik?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a question, maybe give people at home and laymen just a little bit of an idea of what will actually, what will happen with the source. What is approving the TIF plan do from a practicality standpoint while the County Road 5, Trunk Highway 13 interchange is being done? What kind of physically might happen?
What the long and short of it is, I don't know all the numbers, I know the percentages, but 2/3 of the TIF dollars will be allocated for city infrastructure, roads, utilities, etc. 1/3 of the TIF dollars will be allocated toward private development. So, in short, the goal is to allow the city to supply the good dirt and stockpile that on private property. As those properties are, as timing works out and their economics work out, they are allowed to use that dirt free of charge. They have to do their own mitigation, their own mining, and their own replacement, but the city is able to give them that dirt free of charge. And hopefully that will spur the development. Long term, it could still be 5 to 10 years of stockpiling soil on these properties before you see too much redevelopment. But we're actually meeting with property owners. It's likely within the next 12 months you could see some interim use permits come in for these stockpiles and actually see some progress. You won't see progress in buildings for a while, but you will see progress.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I will look for a motion.
I would make a motion that the Planning Commission finds TIF Plan number 7 consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Motion made by Mr. Corey, and do I hear a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Mr. Julik. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign, and the motion carries. And this doesn't go to the City Council?
This will go to the council, not at their next meeting. I believe it'll be the end of November, early December. It has a few more steps.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Selenia. That brings us to item number 5, and I know Mr. Singh has something.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, pleased to let you know, and probably you already know, that October has been proclaimed Community Planning Month by Governor Mark Dayton in Minnesota. Each year in October, we are asked to reflect upon our community impact by celebrating October as Community Planning Month. As members of the planning community, we not only need to remind ourselves about the significant impact we have on communities and neighborhoods, but also need to raise the visibility of the important role planners have in shaping where we work and live by enriching the lives of civic leaders, business interests, and citizens. Governor Dayton had a proclamation, and I will read it. Whereas community planning helps citizens manage changes that affect cities, towns, counties, boroughs, townships, and rural areas, and whereas community planning enables civic leaders, businesses, and citizens to work with professional planners to create a community vision through comprehensive policy recommendations which affect neighborhood redevelopment, historic preservation, transportation, infrastructure, smart growth, public safety, and economic development, and whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents of Minnesota to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their communities, and whereas effective community planning requires public officials and citizens to understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation, and whereas the American Planning Association and the American Institute of Certified Planners endorse Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight the contributions sound planning and plan implementation make to the quality of communities and environment. It is important to recognize the dedication of community planners and other professionals who contribute their time and expertise to the improvement of communities in the state of Minnesota. Now, therefore, I, Mark Dayton, Governor of Minnesota, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2012 as Community Planning Month. I think this is good, and I would like to recognize our planners, our staff who always do such a wonderful job making our jobs as commissioners easier, but more importantly, what they do for the city of Burnsville. And I will also recognize the City Council for allowing us to be able to serve the people of Burnsville and to serve the city. So that's all. Remember, October is Community Planning Month. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Any other updates from the commission? And from the staff?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I just have one. The Planning Commission meeting the week of November 12th has been canceled. This group won't get together again until November 26th.
We'll be full of turkey by then.
Yes,
right?
we will.
Or whatever we eat on Thanksgiving. And no other updates. I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second. Motion made by Mr. Singh, seconded by Mr. Corey. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we are adjourned. Thank you and good night.